I'm Michaela.
I'm Brynna, and you're watching The Feminist Frontier.
Feminism. Merriam-Webster's word of the year. It's about equality, right? It's about women, white women, female bodies, bra-burning, Beyonce, thumb-sucking beta males in skinny jeans.
Thumb-sucking little beta males in skinny jeans.
What the is feminism? In trying to define feminism, it can be tempting to just reach for a dictionary. We tend to regard these definitions as the absolute authority on the phenomena that they describe. But we think it's a little more complicated than that.
It's important to remember that dictionaries are written by humans, fallible, confused humans just like us, with their own experiences, preferences, and biases.
These humans don't just create words out of thin air. Words already have meaning in the real world. And dictionary writers observe reality and try to describe as accurately as possible something that already exists and has meaning in the real world.
For this reason, dictionary definitions are not objective reflections of reality. Rather, the dictionary represents one source, one hopefully informed opinion, but an opinion nonetheless.
Historically, unsurprisingly, the writers of dictionaries have been wealthy, white men.
And it's not that wealthy white men suck and shouldn't be allowed to write dictionaries.
But the fact that they're all wealthy and all white and all men becomes a little problematic in trying to define someone else's lived experience.
Especially when those lived experiences are complex and subjective and culturally contingent.
For example, with a word like racism, the most appropriately nuanced definitions of racism would necessarily come from those who experience it intimately through lived experiences. White folks are comparably ill-qualified to define racism, yet it's the white perspective on racism that gains academic and cultural authority by being added to the dictionary.
So how do we go about defining anything?
We could look to the origins of certain words to try to understand how exactly they've been used throughout history. But accurate sources can be difficult to identify, and relying on preserved written history is going to exclude a lot of folks' perspectives.
The historical approach also doesn't account for the ways in which old theories evolve and repeatedly focus and expand with changing times and places.
Which leads us right back to what the is feminism?
It is nearly impossible to definitively define a word like feminism because feminism is alive. It's a belief system, a political movement, an internal revelation, a behavior, an academic pedagogy, a historical discipline.
That being said, we, like most people, think some definitions are better than others. And by better, we mean more accurate, inclusive, and productive.
For the purposes of this channel, we're going to be using the following definition of feminism, coined by the brilliant feminist scholar Bell Hooks.
Feminism is a movement to end sexism, sexist exploitation, and oppression.
We chose this definition for a few important reasons.
1. It clarifies that sexism is the problem. Contrary to popular belief, men are not the natural enemy of feminism. Sexism is not located in a person or a group of people or a place or an institution. This definition of feminism assumes sexism to be a concept, a system, an evil ideology that must be eradicated wherever it lives.
2, this definition helps us to understand that anyone can participate in supporting, upholding, and perpetuating sexism. All people are equally socialized to accept and internalize sexism. And while men may be the primary beneficiaries of sexism, they are not the only perpetrators of sexism or the only people capable of acting upon sexist beliefs. Fortunately, this also implies that anyone can participate in resisting sexism, disrupting sexism, and advocating for a future that is actively anti-sexist.
3. If the eradication of the ideology is the goal, then all manifestations of sexist ideology are dangerous. This approach can help articulate the significance of instances of sexism that may seem minor to the untrained eye.
A minor headache, for example, considered in isolation without context, might seem like no big deal. But when a headache is a symptom of a brain tumor, the headache becomes a pretty big deal.
In the same way, someone yelling, what that ass do, baby, at a female stranger on the street might not seem like the end of the world. What's the big deal with catcalling when women and girls are being sex trafficked all over the world? Don't feminists have bigger fish to fry?
But if you consider the historic and present reality that women have been, and still are, considered sexual objects who exist to serve men, it's easy to understand how catcalling a stranger is a clear manifestation and demonstration of that thought process, the same thought process which sustains things like sex trafficking.
In this way, individual instances of sexism might have varying levels of severity, but all are merely symptoms of the disease of sexism, a disease which is always serious.
Finally, and importantly, it follows from this definition that to understand feminism, it implies that one has to necessarily understand sexism. If eradicating sexism is the purpose of feminism, then productive feminism necessitates studying sexism, what it is, how it operates, how it manifests, how it maintains its power. These are things we need to know if we want to attack and disrupt sexism and live in a way that is radically anti-sexist.
Many folks who believe themselves to be feminist haven't spent much time actually thinking about how sexism works. Similarly, many people who think that we no longer need feminism or that feminists are the devil incarnate also haven't really studied how sexism works.
In other words, if you want to take down the patriarchy, you gotta know what the patriarchy is.
Thank you for watching The Feminist Frontier. We hope we left you with something to think about.
Let us know your thoughts, opinions, etc. in the comments below, or feel free to email us anytime at thefeministfrontier@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for watching. See you next week.